What's going on? I'm Johnny Mack, and this is Impact Evangelism, the YouTube channel that's all about evangelism. So if you're into evangelism, this is the channel for you. And this is the never-ending stories of evangelism. This video series is designed to encourage you to share your faith with other people. And I have a story for you today from the mission field of Mongolia. And Impact Evangelism does a lot of ministry in the country of Mongolia. And I've been on several trips there to Mongolia, and I stay in Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital city. And when I stay there, I stay in the 3rd district in the city of Ulaanbaatar. And the 3rd district is a middle class, let's say blue collar part of town. And on the outlying city, on the outlying area of the city is the Gur districts, and that's where a lot of the crime takes place, right? And in the 3rd district, there's some street crime that takes place, but it's not quite as bad as other areas. And so Mugi, my translator, helps me out in this area. He tells me where I can go, what's the best places to go and the dangerous places to go. And there's really no place off limits that I will not go in Ulaanbaatar. But I will not go by myself. I'll take 1 or 2 Mongolians with me to keep me safe. And it's always a good idea here, even here in America, to, if you're going out witnessing, to have a partner, at least one other partner. But especially for me, a Westerner, in some of these areas of the city, I would just be a sitting duck. I would be a mark for anybody that wanted to rob me. So I got to be careful when I'm over there. And in the 3rd district, it's like a middle class blue collar type of area of the city. It's densely populated. I think it's the most densely populated district in the city, actually. It's not the largest, but the most densely populated. There's people everywhere. And they live in these Soviet style apartment buildings made out of concrete. And they're built with this really thick concrete to withstand the winter in Mongolia. In the wintertime, it gets below 30 below zero, 40 below zero over there. And then the high temperatures during the winter are around -10 or 0 or a little bit higher. That's the average. So it gets cold. And so these old Soviet style apartment buildings is where people live. And they're old and they're not. This is why they're considered middle class to live in these, because the poor people don't even live in buildings. They don't have running water. They live in the outside of the city in these Ger districts, these little tents. They have no running water in this area, no sewage. So that's the poor area of Ulaanbaatar. We do ministry out there as well. But I was living in the 3rd district, and if you live in one of these apartments, you're considered over there middle class. But these apartments are not as nice as you would find in America. They were fine for me. I love staying there. I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to give you a comparison of how people live in America and how people live outside of America. And it's just really no comparison. I mean, the standard of living here in America from the countries I've visited is not as good as it is here. That's just what I've witnessed with my own eyes. But I would go on these trips, right, and I would stay anywhere from 3 weeks to a month to sometimes 3 months. I stayed there a whole summer one year, pretty much. And so I would take these different trips, different times, but I always lived in the 3rd district. And this 3rd, I loved it because there were just so many people everywhere. I mean, they have all these shops, all these sidewalk vendors, just people everywhere, tons and tons of people to witness to. It's just an awesome place to do missionary work, man. You get up in the morning, it's like a job, it's like you get up, eat your breakfast, take your shower, and you go out and you witness to people all day long. Or I go to a prison and preach, or I go to a rescue mission and preach, or witness to people in the street. It's just what my job is while I'm there. And I love doing it. And so in this 3rd district, like I said, it's kind of a blue collar area. And one thing you got to do in Mongolia is you got to be aware of your surroundings in Ulaanbaatar, especially if you're a male. because the pastime in Ulaanbaatar and probably the rest of Mongolia, for males anyway, and some females, is fist fighting. That's what they like to do, man. I know I'm generalizing here, but they like, it's in their cultures, they like to fight. And they like to drink. They drink a lot and they fight a lot. I can't remember a week going by in my stay there that I did not witness a street fight. Now these are like fist fights. They're not people shooting each other with guns and stabbing each other with knives. I'm sure that's happened over there, but it's not like it is in America. So when people are fighting, it's not as dangerous as it is here, because in America people can shoot each other and all kinds of stuff. But over there, they don't do that. You can't have them. So people just fight with their fists, skin on skin, so to speak. So that's all this background is setting up this story. One day, Moogie and I had just gotten through with a day's work of ministry. And we were walking home back to where I lived in my apartment there in the 3rd District. And there was a group of kids, 2 groups of kids, probably 10 to 12 in each group, I'm guessing. And we were kind of walking on the sidewalk, and we were kind of in the middle of these groups of teenagers. I say kids, they're teenagers. I think school had just let out or something. It's probably why all these kids were out. But anyway, they start yelling back and forth at each other. And the girls are yelling back and forth at each other. And I can't speak Mongolian, but I can imagine, that they weren't nice words, whatever they were saying, because they were said in anger. And before long, a fight breaks out. I mean, just a fist fight between groups of 10 people on each side. It was like a big melee. And Moogie, my translator, man, Moogie, he still works with Impact. He's part of Impact Evangelism as well. And Moogie was there just breaking people up. And he's a little guy, Boogie's a tough guy too. Now, Moogie used to live on the streets. He uses it as part of his testimony, so I don't mind saying this. He was in prison for a period of time. And he got saved, and he's working for the Lord. But, he's a tough guy. He's kind of small, but he's tough. So he's slinging these kids around, not getting into the fight, but trying to separate them so kids don't get hurt, right? And what I'm doing is I just take my hands out of my pocket. It's cold. It's in January, right? And we're all in big coats, and it's like negative 10 degrees, and there's ice on the sidewalk. So my big fear is slipping and falling. Because if you've ever been in or seen a fight with a bunch of people, I mean, I'm not trying to teach, street fight etiquette or anything, but if there's a bunch of people fighting and you see it going on, if you get knocked to the ground and you're in the middle of it, you're in extreme danger. Because when you're on the ground, people can stomp on your face, kick you in the head, do severe damage to you, right? So that's my main concern. I'm standing on ice, and there's fists flying everywhere, kids flying everywhere, and I'll just try not to get knocked down. But Moogie's in there slinging people apart, and the people are kicking, they're getting people in headlocks, and they're getting people in shoulder locks. If you watch MMA, people are getting in arm bars, trying to rip each other's shoulders apart. I mean, it was like nothing I'd ever seen in America, let's put it that way. And so there's, nothing really major happened to the kids. But they were, beat up and bloodied, but no injuries, so to speak. Nobody was knocked to the ground and stomped or anything like that. So at the end of the day, the kids were okay, right? And we were tending to some of them after it was over with. I was talking with a couple of them that looked like they had broken noses and, some missing teeth. And talking to them, asking them if they were okay and stuff like that. And they were okay. And they were, actually talking to me, through Moogie, of course, my translator. But anyway, so the fight breaks up, and they, how it is, they yell back and forth a little bit more, and whatever they're saying, right? It's not nice. Like they weren't saying, hey, have a nice day, right? So they're yelling insults back and forth to each other, and this group of kids went their way, and this group of kids stayed in our general direction, right? And they were walking with us on the sidewalk to the apartment that I lived in, okay? Where I stayed, where I lived. And one thing you got to know about this fight, as I forgot to tell you, is there were girls in this fight. And they were throwing down fighting too. I mean, pulling hair, punching, getting people in headlocks, punching. They, the girls are tough too, obviously. So anyway, so this group of teenagers goes to where I live. And they walk up the same steps where I live. And I noticed that they went to the floor right above where I lived. I mean, their apartment is right above mine. And I knew right away that, man, hey, those people are noisy upstairs. They really are. I mean, they're noisy all night long. The noisy group of kids or parents or whoever stayed there. I'm assuming they stayed with their parents. But that was the kids that lived upstairs. And so one night, all that was to set up this story, okay? One night I'm there and I'm trying to get some sleep. And you suffer from jet lag when you get over there. You sleep at crazy times at night and you're trying to get regulated. And I was having a hard time getting to sleep one night. And what was going on upstairs was what was keeping me awake. And here's what I heard with my ears. I heard somebody screaming, a female, screaming at the top of her lungs for about 4 or 5 hours. Okay? I'm not talking about, not a scream like I'm in pain or I'm hurting or I'm in danger, not no help me or anything like that. It was just open mouth screaming for about 4 or 5 hours. Not straight, of course they had to breathe and all that stuff. But this went on for about 4 or 5 hours. Just a female screaming, and you could hear other voices around, talking and stuff. But what really creeped me out was there's a drum, like a drum beat was going on too. Not somebody playing the drums, somebody just banging on a drum through this 4 to 5 hour period, and this screaming and chanting and talking. And I was like, what in the world is going on up there? It's kind of spooky. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, why didn't you go upstairs and check on them and see what was going on? Well, that would have been too dangerous for me, because one of the rules that I was told while I'm over there is don't go out at night by yourself if you're a foreigner in Ulaanbaatar. I mean, there's certain parts of the cities you live in or the cities you're close to where they're kind of dangerous, that you stay away from, that you have to watch out for yourself. So that was the situation I was in. And I could tell from the screams it wasn't somebody screaming for help, right? So they weren't in immediate danger. It was just very creepy. I don't know what else to say. Very creepy. And I didn't get any sleep that night, and me and Moogie had a full day the next day of ministry work. So Moogie comes to pick me up, and we, these taxis take us all over the city to do our work. And I was talking with Moogie in the taxi. I said, man, let me tell you what happened last night. And I described him the whole thing just like I'm describing it to you. And he said, oh, okay. He starts nodding his head like, I'm like, what? What do you mean, okay? What are you nodding your head? I said, what in the world was going on? He said, oh, you heard an exorcism. I said, what? He said, yeah, you heard an exorcism. He said, shamans still come and do exorcisms in Mongolia. And shamanism is really a bigger percentage of people in Mongolia, this is the truth, follow folk religion, shamanism, whatever you want to call it, more than Christianity in Mongolia. There's a bigger percentage of people that follow folk religion, animism, where spirits are in the tree and the rock and the bush, and spirits are everywhere and inhabiting all things. This is their religion, and they worship the sky god, and this is their religion. Not a huge portion, but a bigger portion than there's bigger portions of those kind of people than Christians in Mongolia, as of the last statistics I saw anyway. So it's kind of common to have exorcism and things, and so that's what was going on. An exorcism from a witch doctor was what I would call him, but a shaman was up there banging a drum, and I don't know if the shaman was the one screaming or the person trying to be exorcised was the one screaming. And Moogie said it could have been either one, but his guess was it was the person being exorcised was doing all the screaming, because in their religion, that's what shamans do. They get in these trances and they speak and talk to spirits. That's what they do. That's pretty much their job description. Evil spirits, good spirits, that's what they do. They try to drive out evil spirits away from people, and And so he was exorcising someone. One of those girls who was in the fist fight on that street was possessed. Maybe. I don't know, right? That was what they thought anyway. Who knows? It's possible. And so, that's just a story from the mission field, right? And there's tons of stories I can tell you about Mongolia in the future. I think I'm going to bring up a lot of them. But when you go out there, out in the world, outside of the safe zone of America, people in America, they get upset because they think they're losing their Christian freedoms and things like that. It's really no comparison to the rest of the world. Yes, we need to keep our freedoms here in America. Don't get me wrong. We have as much of a right as free speech as any group in this country, and that's beginning to be less and less, I think. So we got to stand for our rights in this country and be able to, believe what we believe and say what we believe and not be afraid of the government cracking down on us, right? But in other areas of the world, it's different. It's not as open to Christianity as it is here, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it. It's nothing compared to other areas. And in Mongolia, there's more Buddhists, there's more shamans, there's even more Muslims in Mongolia than Christians. So on the mission field in Mongolia, that when I step out the door every day, that's who I'm witnessing to. I'm not witnessing to people who are backslidden and hadn't gone to church in a few years, or someone who might be in college and they're one of these new YouTube atheist people, that just make fun of Jesus and everything, makes fun of Christians. There's a subculture that's going around now with a young group of people. But over there, it's like, Buddhists, Muslims, shamans, and non-religious people, or is the mission field over there. So I have to be able to navigate my way through all of that stuff to be able to communicate the gospel to people and people get saved. So that's what it's like on the mission field. It's not like here in America. And so it's dangerous over there in different areas of the world. It's a lot more dangerous in other places than Mongolia, right? It's still legal to an extent. There's a lot of stuff I won't tell you. We can't stand out on the street corner and preach in Mongolia. We'll get deported, right? You can't do that. But you can work with other Mongolians. There's ways around it that you can still spread the gospel and still not break the law and be deported, right? So there are some restrictions, especially on foreigners sharing the gospel in Mongolia, but not like other places like in the Middle East or in some parts of China. So there's other places more dangerous than Mongolia, don't get me wrong, but it's different from sharing the gospel here in America in a lot of areas anyway. So this is just to remind you about what missionaries go through. So if you're not supporting a missionary and you want to support us, let me know. Hey, we're trying to get back to Mongolia. The pandemic and the shutdowns and the lockdowns and the flight restrictions, we just haven't been able to go back. And plus, we're low on funds. We couldn't afford to go back right now if the door was wide open. So we need the funds to get back, and we'd love to get back over there and do more ministry work. And if you want to help us do that, you can. We have a Facebook page you can visit. It's Impact Evangelism on Facebook. And we have a PayPal account there you can donate money to if you wish. And we have a P.L. box there you can mail a check, however you want to help us. We would love the help. If you don't want to help us, that's cool. If God doesn't lead you to do that, just help somebody, right? Reach into your pocket and help a missionary somewhere that's sharing the gospel other places but America, right? Reach into that pocket and help those missionaries because they need the money to do what, excuse me, they need the funds to do what God's called them to do. So if you want to make an impact on this world, help a missionary. And if you want to make an impact on this world, what are you waiting for? Go out today and share the gospel.